Hello, and welcome in everybody. Welcome in everybody. My name is Jeff Lighty Jr. here with the Black Boss Channel and Victory Formation. Thank you guys for tuning in. I have a special guest today, Mr. Kyle T. Mosely of HBCU Legends via Sports Illustrated. How are you doing today, Kyle?
What's going on, Jeff? How you doing, sir?
I am doing really well, and I am thankful that you were able to come on here so quickly. I shot you a message. You were very responsive, so that I'm always thankful for, and I'm glad to get into some of these topics because HBCU sports, specifically HBCU football, is booming. And you broke a story earlier this week that got a lot of people excited. But before we get to that, Kyle, I want to ask you, how long have you been in this HBCU sporting space, and how has it been since you started the HBCU Legends?
Well, HBCU Legends started as a concept at the end of last season. We kicked around the idea of what could possibly be because HBCU sports wasn't getting the coverage that we thought it should have on Sports Illustrated, right? So I started with the concept during the spring session, covered the guys, covered the teams in the SWAC mostly, not in MEAC, because MEAC wasn't playing. So it was successful trial run. So summertime comes around. They wanted to have a site up and running. We went forward and we did some excellent coverage. I really came in at the right time to be able to cover. Now, I'm an HBCU grad.
Ooh,
I
shout
come
out to
from an
that.
HBCU family. Look,
Okay.
the house.
The house. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
All
Yeah.
right. So I'm a HBCU grad. My dad went to Southern. My mom went to Dillard. My grandmother went to Dillard. My aunts, uncles went to Dillard, Grambling, Southern. So I come from an HBCU family from New Orleans, and that was in my blood. So I knew about HBCUs. I met Coach Rob before, had some time to be able to talk to legends, and I thought it was fitting when I had a conversation with James Shack Harris as well as Doug Williams to
Mm.
call this HBCU Legends.
Awesome. Once again, we're talking to Kyle T. Mosely of HBCU Legends. Shout out to my cousin Bob, man. I just saw he was in the building. Shout out to him. Hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. Now, since you've been in this space, since you followed HBCU sports because you, like you said, you're a graduate of the house. What has this looked like since you joined and been a part of this and been covering this? What does HBCU sports kind of look like? Because I mean, to me, in the last year, it is really taken off. What, from your perspective, what have you seen?
Yeah, the same. Um, it's a tremendous rise in the popularity. It's almost like a renaissance in HBCU sports. Of course, football is going to always be the uh, the top of the list, the top of the food chain when it comes to sports, especially in the professional side, where I covered the New Orleans Saints. The football season is what you're going to do. You're going to make your money, your dollars there. But let's be honest. Deion Sanders was the story,
Tell it.
right?
Tell it. Keep going.
And and even coaches have to admit, and they started to admit toward the end of the season, mostly that his influence really helped propel the coverage in the SWAC, MEAC, SIAC, as well as CIAA. You had tremendous coaches already. You had guys like Damon Wilson over at Bowie State, who went time and time again getting the championships of the conference, going to the playoffs. You saw those type of guys.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had Deion to come in at the right time where the SWAC was doing well. You had Glass over at Alabama A&M. You
Mm-hmm.
had Coach Maynard. He was doing a tremendous job with those guys. You had Coach Fobbs over at Grambling. He was still doing a good job. You know, they had a couple bad years, but he was still doing a tremendous job. Dooley, you know, was a name you always had to recognize and pay attention to. So those guys were doing tremendous jobs already. But sometimes you have to have that one person who can illuminate a situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And look, I don't know if you're familiar with the situation I'm talking about, Jeff, is when I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago, Prime was on the NFL network covering the NFL Combine in
Mm-hmm.
Indy. And that's when he spoke it into existence that I need to start an HBCU combine. Why don't we have more HBCU representation at the National Football League's combine? And that kind of hit a chord with a lot of people. Now, you got to give Ashley Robinson, as well as the president of Jackson State University, a lot of credit.
Absolutely.
Right? Because they rolled the dice and they came out winning big time.
Yeah.
With offering the opportunity to them, right, Jeff?
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you look at what's happening since, because a lot of people thought it was going to be a sideshow. I'll be honest with you. I heard it from colleagues. Oh, Deion just wants the limelight. Oh, he's just going to, he just got to get it. Oh. And I heard that from these guys. And you read it. You had guys like, was it Feinbaum? I think he questioned it for a second, right?
A quick second. All of them was real quick. It was the problem, I think, and even on my show, I will say I never questioned it. I thought the approach was unorthodox. All the cameras, all the social media buzz. Like, you don't see Alabama do that. You don't see, Georgia do these kind of things. But now, since Prime has been doing it, you see more social media coverage with these programs. You see more cameras around these guys. You see more interaction. Like Prime, he was so touchable. Like, as a head coach of a college football program, and one that he says going to be dominant, it was just so unorthodox. It was something you had never seen before. And even I didn't question it. I was just like, will he be able to continue? Because, like, this is Prime. It's like, will he be able to be Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, as a head football coach of a Division I program? That was the only thing that I was kind of like, will he be able to be himself? And surely, that's been the case the entire time.
Look, man, it was a shock. I remember I was covering a story for the Saints early that morning, September 21st, and I think it was really, the leak came out the day or two before, right? That they were thinking about extending him an offer. And when you finally saw those pictures flashing of him sitting there with the Jackson State jacket, the white cap on and everything else, I was like, man, this is reality.
Yeah.
This wasn't something that Coach Prime was just bumping at the gums about, right?
You're right.
And so it became one of the situations that either he's going to do well and succeed, or he's going to fail miserably. And knowing what you know about Coach Sanders over his career, I've seen him since he was in the college all the way through, because we're kind of the same age, right? But I had that feeling that he wasn't going to go down fighting the good fight.
Absolutely.
So I'm proud. And I told him that when I had a chance to speak with him. I'm proud of him. I'm proud of what he's been able to accomplish. I saw HBCU sports when I was young. The first Bayou Classic was in New Orleans at Tulane Stadium, not the Superdome. Okay. I was there. I saw 72,000 people in Tulane Stadium.
Wow.
Mostly African American, right?
Yeah.
And Tulane Stadium at that time had the capacity over 90,000. Okay. So let me just give you that perspective. Okay. So I saw Doug Williams throw the ball up and down Tulane Stadium field. And the Southern faithful, like I was, crying. And I told Doug that. I said, I didn't appreciate that, Doug. I was crying that day. I was like, I think I was 6 or 7 at that time, man. And he was just, man, Doug was just throwing that ball. But I'm saying this because I saw the heyday. My family participated in the Bayou Classics. We were there. We were a part of it in that whole fabric. My godfather was good friends with Coach Robs and the assistants and all these other guys. So he knew what was happening, the inner workings of Grambling, and how well respected Coach Rob was across the landscape of not just football, but sports as a whole, right?
Mhm.
So then you have the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s. There was a lull in HBCU sports.
Mhm.
And a lot of people say that's because the talent was going elsewhere, right?
Mhm.
Now, a lot of people don't realize this, but Coach Rob wanted the talent to go elsewhere.
This
He
is Coach
was
Rob of who? Coach Rob of
Coach
who?
Rob, Eddie Robinson.
Eddie Robinson. Okay. Okay.
All
Just
right.
making sure.
He was talking to a lot of these coaches, big name college coaches, and saying, "Hey, you guys got to look at some of these guys because they need to get the recognition, the prominence, and the talent. They had that talent that was above everyone else." So he was a proponent of that. Some of the guys in the SWAC and MEAC didn't really care for him to be a proponent for that. Of course, because you lose your own talent.
Yeah.
And, but when you look at that game that USC had against Paul Bear Bryant down in Alabama, when USC visited them, that changed the landscape of HBCU sports as well.
Mm.
Because when Sam Bam Cunningham went in and lit Alabama up, ran up and down the field of Legion Fields, they had no answer for them, and they got whooped on primetime TV in front of millions and millions of people, as Ali would have said. Right? So that really was the catalyst for Paul Bear Bryant, who was the pinnacle of the coach. What you want to talk about, the football coach, that's what he was to so many people. When he finally he gave in and said that he needed to kind of desegregate his team and find more of those highly talented running backs and skill position guys, that's what really changed the landscape of college sports as a whole. And we lost a lot of good talent. Now, today, you have guys like Travis Hunter.
Mm.
You have guys like Mr. Williams. Those guys are saying, I want to be a part of HBCU sports because you have a Hall of Famer there
Mm.
that's talking to them. You have Hugh Jackson, who has done a tremendous job in a short period of time to do the recruiting, right? Look what he's done. The commitments, the recruits, the JUCO guys, the portal transfer guys have come into Grambling now. Now they're going to be highly competitive,
Mm-hmm.
right? I thought it was going to be 2 or 3 years that he gets up and running, but he's hitting the ground running.
He hit the
right?
ground running, yes. And he's getting
Right.
those guys from out in LA, like West Coast connection, Hugh Jackson. It's like, yeah, I was curious on how Hugh was going to be able to use his West Coast ties to bring people to the boot. And it's working. I mean, he's got those kids coming from LA, from South Central LA. It's never been to Louisiana before in life, but they believe in Coach Hugh Jackson. And that is something that's amazing. It's been beautiful to watch in such a short amount of time, like you mentioned. Now, Kyle, I want to ask you this. You said you spoke with Coach Prime recently. Just in that conversation, what were some of the biggest tidbits that you were able to take out of that and come from that conversation after talking to Deion Sanders?
At that time, he was preparing for the Celebration Bowl.
Okay.
So he wanted to finish strong. That was his mantra, finish strong, to be able to make sure that these guys are going to take care of business. Well, they didn't, unfortunately for Jackson State. But one of the biggest tidbits was the fact that, one, he loves his assistant coaches and believes strongly that those guys can become head coaches, the ones who choose to become head coaches. He did share that he didn't think Dennis Thurman cared to be a head coach at any level. So, and he also shared that he believed that his assistant coaches kind of have a good thing going, so they may not be wanting to leave anytime soon, right? Because let's be honest, Coach Flea did a great job in his absence.
He did. He did.
And I was surprised that Prairie View didn't make a run at him. They needed to have a high name, talented person, but I think the administration is kind of tight on their budget, so to speak. So they stuck with Coach McDowell, which is an excellent hire. Don't get me wrong, because I know my cousin played with him with the Houston Oilers. So Coach McDowell, Steve Jackson. So he played with him. He gave him a great vote of confidence because he's now a defensive back coach for the Cincinnati Bengals. But anyway, Jeff, I think when you look at what Deion was trying to say, the impression he left me with, and I guess the greatest impression was in the conversation, is that he wants his guys, and he knows that everybody won't be a professional football player. So he wants his guys to be well equipped to handle life after college. What type of careers can they get? What type of situations they can be able to be in? Because some of these young men are parents. And that's one thing that we kind of failed to realize. Some of these young guys probably have been the parents since high school, right? So you want to put them in a situation where they can be able to earn and provide for their families. That's what a man wants, right?
Absolutely.
So that's what I gathered. That's what is the intangible factor that a Lane Kiffin or a Nick Saban can't give to these guys. To understand their plight as a young minority kid growing up in an inner city situation, and how this sports life can impact me as a whole and transform my life and other people who may be dependent upon me. So that's what I gathered as more important than anything else than when we were talking about sports.
Wow, that's awesome, Cal. That's awesome. Once again, we're talking to Cal T. Mosely of HBCU Legends. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, guys. Like, share, subscribe. Now, Cal, you broke some news this week. I mean, it was pretty big. You spoke to Jerry Rice, the legend, the GOAT.
The GOAT.
Jerry Rice, the GOAT. He's undisputed. He's undisputed. And when you spoke to him, it was something that wasn't on the radar. You asked him straight up. You said, hey, is coaching something you're interested in? And Jerry said, not until Deion. Not until Deion. And now it looks as if Jerry Rice could potentially be roaming the sideline somewhere. Just talk to me about that conversation. And what was your reaction when you heard Jerry Rice say that he could potentially be, interested in coaching an HBCU program?
Well, I got to applaud first Deion and Jerry, both being Hall of Famers, who took the time to just have a good casual conversation, number one. Number two, Jerry was very loquacious in the conversation. I got more of the video that's coming out this weekend.
Absolutely.
So the first part of the video, when we were talking about business, I think he's representing Lay's in this promotion for Golden Ground chips. So that's coming out for the NFL. Then I didn't ask this of him. He came out straight and said, hey, man, I'm proud of Deion and what he has done at Jackson State. And him being a former HBCU player himself from Mississippi Valley, right? There's that kinship that you have to be proud of, what you see in HBCU landscape of sports right now. So then Jerry, you could tell that he had an interest in what was happening with HBCU sports, because my follow-up question was, Mississippi Valley's done very well this year toward the end of the season, right? So what would you do? What's your thoughts, so to speak? And he came right out and said they need to focus on recruiting, getting people of high level talent on board, Jogged my memory. That's what Dion said in my conversation with him as well. If you
Mm.
can't, as a head coach, can't recruit, and you can't recruit a good staff to come along with you, you're not going to be successful. Okay. And then I had to ask him, do you have you ever contemplated becoming a head coach? And that's when it came out. He had. I mean, look, it was kind of shocking, but think about this, man, Jeff. A couple of months ago, Kevin Hart did a one-on-one. I think that what's the name of it? When he gets into the ice water with the guy.
The little ice bucket show. I know, yeah.
Okay, all right. So he did a one-on-one with Jerry, and he said, "Who did you hate?" And I wrote about this as well. Jerry said, "I hated Deion Sanders the most." And it wasn't because he hated him as a person, because he knew this guy was going to do what? Push him every day. Even when they were just across from one another, he knew I had to run the best routes, because Deion could probably already figure out which route I'm going to run and how I was going to get open. So what's that telling you? There's some admiration there.
Absolutely.
Right? There's some respect. So therefore, I took it when Jerry said that because of Deion, he has given it thought. It's through the respect and admiration that he has for him.
Now, Kyle, from your conversation, do you think that this is something that Jerry Rice really would consider? Like, say, I mean, obviously it looks like all the SWAC jobs are filled up now, but say one or two or three of them pop open next fall or next summer. Is this something that you can see schools start to reach out to Jerry Rice and, shake the, dust the tires off and shake those tires and see if anything's there?
Yeah, look, covering the NFL for a number of years, you always see one thing: it's a copycat league. Right?
That's
so
true.
Why couldn't the college ranks become copycat? Well, they have.
Oh yeah, they most certainly have.
Eddie George, right?
Hugh Jackson,
Robert Massey. He played for the Saints. He's out at Winston-Salem, right?
Bubba McDowell,
Bubba McDowell, Eddie Robinson Jr., right?
Yeah.
So you see it kind of building steam there. It's coming, it's building up. That pressure is coming, and that's why some of these Division I coaches went off and talked negatively about NILs. Think about it.
Absolutely.
That was done on purpose.
Absolutely. Keep going.
Yeah, look, Jeff. It's not an accident that Nick Saban addresses a huge topic like this, right? Lane Kiffin kind of let the real cat out the bag how he was feeling when you say, I hope these guys aren't being promised what they say they're going to be promised and all this, What are you saying? Right? So I know for years, man, I remember when my younger cousin was being recruited by Florida State, University of Miami, Notre Dame, Penn State. Okay. There were some guys calling the house that weren't officials trying to do some unofficial stuff. Right? So that has been a part of this recruiting game for many a year. It's nothing new. Now, the NILs give it a more legal approach to be done, right? And I think when you look at Bryce Young of Alabama, he had $1 million deal, right? So if Bryce Young can have $1 million deal, why couldn't Shedeur Sanders with his Beats deal be $1 million deal? Or you have Owens from Jackson State. He had an NIL and everything else. So Mark Evans from University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, he had an NIL deal with Denny's. And you look at all these young people who are having these deals, and more will come. But is it a part of the package to say if you go to this school or that school, we're going to give you the deal. I don't know if that's a fair assessment by these Division I coaches in making those type of insinuations.
Kyle, just from my perspective, once again, I'm talking to Kyle T. Mosely of HBCU Legends. My thing is, NIL didn't become a problem until Deion Sanders got Travis Hunter. Like NIL, like you said, Bryce Young got $1 million. He hadn't thrown a pass yet. He hadn't started a game. He hadn't touched the field. But as soon as Deion Sanders got the #1 player in the country to come to Jackson State, oh, NIL is ruining college football. Oh my God, what is going on? Oh man, like you see all these people come out the woodwork. It's like, where was all of this energy when Bryce Young, the #1 quarterback in the country, gets $1 million before he ever throws a pass? Where was this energy? But all of a sudden, it's like, oh, Travis Hunter only chose Jackson State because Barstool promised him $1 million. No, that's not it at all. It's because he wanted to go play, learn from the best, and play in front of 60,000 people that look like him. I don't see a problem in that. I didn't see a problem at all.
You and I won't see a problem in that, Jeff. But let's talk about that energy. Because what you're saying is what I said to a Fox affiliate in Houston a couple of days ago. Don't trust the okie doke. So they're pulling the wool over your eyes. So
absolutely.
You remember in the movie Gladiator when the emperor finally found out that Russell Crowe's character Maximus was alive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the character came up, his buddy came up to him and said, hey, look, he's going to have to kill your name first before he kills you. What does that mean? He's got to damage your reputation, because if he just straight up and killed Maximus, he was going to be a martyr. He was going to be beloved more. He didn't want anyone to be beloved more. So they've got to damage your reputation. And I think that the insinuations became damaging, a hit toward Coach Prime's reputation, right?
Absolutely.
To make that accusation without any factual basis whatsoever, that was wrong for Lane Kiffin, as well as Mike Leach, and Dabo Swinney also was a part of that. Now, I got to give Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M credit, because he said, look, we've been doing this for years.
I mean, he ain't lying. He ain't lying.
He did not lie. So why are we talking about it now?
Yeah, it's only because the black kids are choosing the black schools. You don't have to put it that bluntly, but I will, because that's what it looked like to me. Like I said, all these other players, like I just read an article. And now this is just rumor. These are rumor reports, so I'm not stating them as facts. But I did read this, that Texas A&M dished out $30 million. They just pulled in the #1 recruiting class in the history of recruiting, according to 24/7, as far as points go. They had 6 5-stars. Jackson State got 1. Texas A&M got 6 and 19 4-stars. In that recruiting class, they pulled in, from what I read. Now, that might not be true, but there's a lot of truth to this. Where the smoke, there's fire.
Okay.
$30 million plus potentially to get all of those guys. So basically what they would do, and I know this is happening. This is not just subjugated to Texas A&M. I know this is happening at schools across the country. What happens is because Texas A&M is one of the richest schools as far as bringing in money, as far as athletics.
Oh, yeah.
So they have prominent boosters. They have really prominent boosters. And what happens is they go to a booster. They talk to a kid, yada, yada. They go to a booster. They're like, hey, this is the guy we want. Let's just throw out a name, Kyle Mosely. Kyle Mosley's the guy we want, prominent booster, whoever you are. It's like, cool. You go to the kid, you're like, hey, we're going to set you up with 50, 75, 100,000. Just say this is your NIL as soon as you sign the name on the dotted line. And from what I've been told, to make sure that the kids don't transfer after they do it, they sign them to multi-year deals. And so what the booster will do is create an LLC, because you have to have a business to have NIL or whatever. Create an LLC, and as soon as the kid signs to Texas A&M, you have, hey, my LLC, Jeff Lighty Incorporated has just sponsored or given the NIL deal to Kyle Mosely. And that's how we get our top recruits. And so from what I've been told, they've dished out between $25 to $30 million, potentially, it's all allegedly. So there's no problem. Nobody's speaking out against that. Nobody's saying that's a problem. But as
Well,
soon as Travis Hunter goes to Jackson State, who hasn't guaranteed anything,
right.
now there seems to be a problem.
Yeah, Jeff, let's be honest, man. Um, it's not just alumni, not just boosters. It's right now you can have just the casual fan who has made a boatload of money get involved with these recruiting efforts these days.
Yes, you
So
can.
I know I'm here in Houston, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know firsthand how the University of Texas, as well as Texas A&M, they have special recruiting department. Every day, their goal and responsibility is to be able to bring in money
Mm-hmm.
every day. So I think until some HBCU schools could be able to get to that level of having just people who beating the phones and making the contacts and smoozing the deals and connecting and networking on a day-to-day basis, they may still be behind the eight ball, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I think what, and I said this in my article, the intangibles, you've got to think about the intangibles. So when I made a decision to attend Morehouse, it wasn't because I couldn't attend Tulane or Loyola or LSU or someone like that in my backyard. It's because when the guy talked to me about hold on one second, I'm sorry. When the
Oh, that's
guy
fine.
talked to me about Morehouse, he told me about Dr. King, Maynard Jackson, Julian Bond, Edwin Moses. Spike wasn't even on the radar at that time, right? So when you talk to a young guy like Travis Hunter to say, hey, you could be like the next Walter Payton to come out of Jackson State University as a Hall of Famer, right? Or you could be one of the legends coming out of the SWAC, like so many legends before that are now in Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what has been missing from a lot of these young guys when they have these talks with other companies or other colleges and universities about what's going to happen with my future. Is
Mm-hmm.
that, do you know me? Do you know who I am? Do you understand who I am? And I think Dion, think about it. He comes from a single parent home. He knew how important it was to be able to be the best and help his mother. And that's what a lot of these young guys want, to be able to help their family situations, man. And sometimes the promises haven't always been fulfilled with Division I schools. How many top recruits you heard go in and never come out?
It's too many to count. It's too many to count. That's why the transfer portals flooded now. The transfer
Right.
portals flooded now because those guys get to those universities and they recruited 10 guys that are just as good as you at your same position, and you'll never get the light of day like you thought you would. You thought you'd go to Alabama and become Derrick Henry, but instead you go to Alabama and end up at somewhere else. Like that's just what happens.
Look, Alvin Kamara is a great example, right?
He is, yes.
Who he was sitting by Derrick Henry.
It
I
was like
forgot.
T.
Josh
Yeah, King and Drake, TJ
Rob,
Yeldon,
Yeldon, and yeah,
Damian Harris. It was so many. That's so many running backs all at
man,
one time.
and then there's a classic photo of all five of those guys and Kamara,
Yeah,
and all five of them are huge, right? And Kamara to them is like a little peon,
yeah.
but he is no way he was getting the ball.
No.
The same way with Mr. Robinson this year for Alabama. He wasn't getting the ball until this year after everybody had to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So, look, talent is abundant, right? And I think if you get a coach who can do well in grooming the talent, that's what you want to be a part of. It's not about the program as much as what can I learn and whatever I'm going to get, will it be able to blossom into something profitable and not profitable, but more important later for me as a young man? What can
Yes.
I learn? What
Hmm.
can I understand about life situations and how to handle them? Instead of being a hothead, I was very temperamental when I was young, man.
Hmm.
So instead of being a temper guy, my band director, he took me on, hey, man, look, you got talent, you're doing this, 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 and this, you're smart, don't risk this. That's what these guys are telling them, you know, where the other guys may come at them where you do it as I say, and if you don't do
Yeah.
it as I say, you're gone, buddy. Something to that nature. You don't want that.
Yeah.
So it's how you talk to young guys these days. It's a different way. You don't talk at them, you talk with them, and you kind of work with these guys because they have
Absolutely.
options, Jeff.
Absolutely. You're right. You're right about that. I always found it interesting. Once again, we're talking to Cal T. Mosely of HBCU Legends. I always found it interesting that, all the players of football, all across the, whether it's NFL, Division One, Two, Three, NAIA, whatever, they're all mostly black. And let's just be honest. They're almost, especially the skill position. But all the coaches were always white. And I was just like, well, wouldn't it make sense,
Why are
especially
the
now that
quarterbacks white? Why are the
yeah.
quarterbacks white?
Well, that's starting to change now. Now folks are finally starting to realize we can actually play quarterback too. We ain't just got to be the running backs and receivers. But it just never made any sense that if I have all of these talented players, why wouldn't any of those, the ones who don't, even the ones who do become professionals or whatever, want to get into coaching? Why couldn't they become a Nick Saban? Why couldn't they become this Bear Bryant? Or why couldn't they become Dabo Swinney? That it never really sat right with me. I always wondered that. And now you have a guy like Prime that relates more, like you said, relates more to these kids because he's been in that position. Eddie George has been in that position. Hugh Jackson's been in that position. Not in that position as a coach. They've been in that position as a player. They've been in that position as a human, coming
Yes.
from that single parent household, from whatever inner city, whatever part of Florida, Texas, Kentucky, Ohio, wherever you're from. Like, they've been there as a human. They know what it's like when the lights ain't on. And they know what it's like eating, ramen noodles and bologna sandwiches. Like, they've been there, and they can help guide you to become not only a better football player, but a better man. And I think that is exactly right. And I want you to talk about this, Kyle, because you went to an HBCU. That HBCU experience you can't get anywhere else outside of football. We're talking about the actual campus life. What was that like from what you remember?
Okay, so my first week, freshman week at Morehouse, we're sitting in Robert Hall. We're about to go to Sale Hall for our gathering, right? First gathering, all the freshmen together. Sale Hall, all older chairs and wood chairs, and some of them didn't even have seats in them and everything. So, but anyway, long story short, you go look to the left, look to the right. That person may not be there at graduation. You've heard that before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is true. And some of those guys weren't. But better than that, Jeff, when I was listening to Bernice King, Dr. King's daughter, give an address at Spelman on why we should vote, because it was a presidential voting year that year. I was 17 when I attended Morehouse, so I didn't even think I could vote, but I could, based upon the requirements, whatever. So when I'm handing my voter registration card, there's Coretta Scott King.
Wow.
Okay. So tell me, Jeff, I mean, how many people can actually say they've been in the presence of what we classify as black royalty, so to speak, right? The Obamas are now that epitome for African Americans in the United States of America. But it was the intangibles. Every week we had like a convocation where we got to hear Earl Graves. We got to hear other notable speakers. Desmond Tutu and those guys came to Morehouse, and we got to see people who of importance on the weekly basis, not on a daily basis, but a weekly basis. I mean, not monthly, but on weekly, we heard and we heard, and then you got to interact with young ladies at Spelman, people at Morris Brown, at Clark Atlanta U. So the whole experience of the Atlanta University Center was a great experience. Then my sophomore year, Spike Lee started to film School Days. So you got to see the process of what he was doing and being some of those scenes and stuff. So those things now, after all these years, I'm telling to my son, I'm able to articulate to him the importance of what I was able to receive at a historical Black college and university. You know, my grandmother went and she graduated from Dillard University in the 30s. Right?
Wow.
So think about that. And then she went on to Atlanta University. So at my graduation, I'm talking with her. She said, "Look, that used to be my classroom." I say, "Oh, that's where you attended?" No, she said, "That's where I taught." So those things, man, it's just great to have people who of influence to come and speak with you. You're not going to get some of that at some of these other PWIs or Power Fives or whatever. You're not going to have people to really take an interest in you. And you look at what Young Dolph, the rapper, and he was slain, but a few months before he lost his life, he was there at Jackson State in the locker room with those guys celebrating wins,
It
right?
was.
Now, think about how those guys are going to be able to talk about that. Man, I remember when Young Dolph came into our locker room and talked, hung out with us. You know, you don't get that, man.
You don't.
So those are the things, and you get the pomp and circumstances from the bands, the dancing girls, the homecoming parades, and look, Adrian Johnson, she was in Baby Boy as his mother, right? She was my homecoming queen my freshman year at Morehouse. She's a Spelman Knight.
Okay.
AJ. That's what we knew at. AJ. That's what we used to call. So yeah, man, you look. I sat down side by side with Julian Bond once, and though, can you say that?
Nah, I can't say that. I can't say that.
Those are the important figures in life. Now that we look at them as historical figures, Andrew Young and those guys came to our campus. I could go on and on and on and on. John Lewis as well. I'm sorry, I forgot about him. He was there. So I'm telling you, man, a young guy like Travis Hunter may not be saying to himself, "I'm going to have these cultural realizations now," but later he's going to understand, after being at Jackson State, the influence of the culture will be on him.
Absolutely. Once again, we're talking to Kyle T. Mosely of HBCU Legends. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, guys. Thanks for all the comments and the participation. Now, Kyle, I'll get you out on this. Just we see what Coach Prime is doing. We see what he's doing as far as at Jackson State with the SWAC, but we also see his impact getting Eddie George as the coach at Tennessee State. Hugh Jackson is now the coach at Grambling State. Jerry Rice has expressed interest. Where do you see this going? If you had like a prediction, what are some of your things that you're looking forward to from just HBCU sports in general after this? I mean, it's only been year one. This was literally, we just wrapped up year one of Deion Sanders coming to the SWAC, coming to Jackson State. Where do we see this in year 2, 3, maybe even 5 from now? Where do you see this thing going, or do you think Deion Sanders is someone who's going to jump ship after a couple successful seasons at Jackson State?
Yeah, man, I heard that about Coach Prime, and I listened to him in these press conferences over the year every week. The forward that he missed because he was out because of the foot surgery. And I listened to him at the SWAC championship when he said, "No one believed at this time and at this moment that we would be here. But I believe, he said probably most of you guys in this room didn't believe. Probably 20% of y'all did, right? But most of you guys didn't believe that we could be able to accomplish what we were able to accomplish. I think there's a lot of unfinished business. And look, man, sometimes a butt whooping can make you realize there's something much bigger out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
A butt whooping that they took at the hands of South Carolina State can make you say, yeah, we need to come back and we need to really, really put our who Jackson State and let people know that we're not going to take this lightly, right? But also, if you listen to the words that he's saying, Jeff, he's not saying that I'm ready to go. That he's saying that, one, he has a son that's still there, two sons that's still there,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Shallow, I don't know about if this is his last year of eligibility or not, but you still have a son. You're still making commitments to these young players like a Travis Hunter to
Mm-hmm.
come to your school. Would you actually leave this situation where, like he also said, he provokes change?
Absolutely.
He always provoked change at every level he said I've been in.
Mm-hmm.
So why not shift the balance toward HBCUs? Right? They still got to do some work. They still got to be able to have better offensive and defensive lines to be able to handle the big boys in the Division Ones. I think that's the major test right there, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
If you already have the skill position players.
You're right. Mm-hmm.
Can you have the offensive line that can withstand an assault like you seen Georgia did to Alabama, right?
Yeah.
Can you have a defensive line that can be able to put pressure on a quarterback over and over and over again? And he did say that's what he's addressing, that offensive line, because that was a major issue throughout the whole season for Jackson State. But until HBCU schools have better offensive and defensive lines, they're always going to be under some of these FCS schools. So I was in Hammond when the Rattlers took on Southeastern Louisiana. I was at that game.
You was at the game.
And they're being pushed around.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, no.
And Coach Simmons can probably attest to this.
And the score reflected it. I mean, it was like 38-14, I want to say. It was like, yeah, it was like the score.
Cole Kelly was like I think he's 6'4", 6'5". Man, that kid playing looked like he was 6'7", 6'8" on the field as a quarterback. And that ball was running over people. Mm-hmm. Okay. So all I'm saying is this: you can have great talent at this level. You want your talent to be up here. So you always are going to find those Travis Hunters and whomever else to get you to where you need to be at. And I think that's his challenge. And I think he's really taking it seriously, that he can go in and make more of to bring more of the talent that they need to challenge teams in the next through 2 to 3 years. Because I don't think he believes it can be done next season. It may be 2 or 3 years before he's able to really get there.
Absolutely. I've made this, I've said this on my platform multiple times. In 1 year, Deion Sanders has been able to do more for Jackson State and make an impact on Jackson State and HBCU culture, not just sports, but the culture in general. He's been able to do in 1 year than he'd be able to do, because they always bring up the Florida State job, in 50 years at Florida State. Like, Florida State will never be able to appreciate him and love him the way those folks down in Jackson, Mississippi do. And not just in Jackson, Mississippi, but Black people across this country. Because he's given us, he has literally set a standard that you can't go in reverse anymore. You can't do anything. It's like, okay, Prime's doing it like this. Now we know that the excellence is there. He's brought in a number one player as far as high school recruits. He's brought in top recruiting classes as far as FCS, HBCU, whatever. He's done all of these things. So now I know it can be done. Now I know it can be done. I have an example in front of me that maybe that was never there before. As far as like the modern times, I'm gonna say as far as the modern times.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah, so that had never been done before. And so now I have a standard of excellence. And not to say the standard of excellence wasn't there, but now it's like, okay, now I might have to dish out a few more dollars for a Hugh Jackson or dish out a few more dollars for a Eddie George or rally my alumni base and say, hey, if you guys want a great product on the field, donate more to this university, donate more to your Southerns, to your Gramblings, to your Jackson States. That way we can go out and get us a Deion Sanders. Because to be honest, a dude like Deion Sanders is taking a pay cut to be at Jackson State, to be the head coach. He's taking a pay cut.
I think Deion said it best. He said, I don't need.
He don't.
Okay, when you say I don't need and you still there, aren't you a threat? Think about it, Jeff. Aren't you a threat? That's just like you say, I'm coming on. You got Dr. King right behind you.
Yes,
right?
sir.
If Dr. King had if he didn't have to be cautious about what he said or did, I think you would have heard more coming out of that platform, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you always have to be judicious in what you say, right? So I think with Coach Prime, I think the HBCU culture did wonders for him as well. And I want to make a note of that.
Yes.
Because when he first experienced the homecoming at Jackson State, how proud he was of what was happening at homecoming and the pageantry. He said it. I never seen anything like that. Right? Think about that. So as many times we think we're doing something to help other people, that same act of kindness, generosity, or wisdom that you share can actually do wonders for you in return. So I think right now, Coach Prime has benefited as well. And I think that's one of the major reasons, too, the intangible for him that he may not be ready to leave.
Absolutely, absolutely. Once again, guys, we're talking to Cal T. Mosely. You can find Cal T. Mosely of HBCU Legends right there on Twitter. That's his @name, @KTMOZE, right there on Twitter. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel, Jeff Lighty Jr., right here in the Black Boss channel. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button on your way out. Mr. Cal, thank you so much for joining me. Hey, we'll definitely have you back on. You got any last words?
Yeah, look, guys, Jeff does a tremendous job. I watched you. I watched you before I even came on, man. And I'm proud of what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. And support him at every level you can. Please do so. Jeff, thank you so much. I'm honored that you had me as your guest.
Hey, thank you. And we will have you on again because you do some great work over there at HBCU Legends. You talk to some great people and get some great insight. Thank you all again. Hit the thumbs up button before you head out, and we will see you next time. Peace.
Thank